Great. So it's wonderful to be back here. And so let me take you now from southern Africa to the rainforests of southern India, where I have had the pleasure and privilege of working on a community of much smaller animals than you'll hear in most of this conference. That's a community of insects, crickets and katydids, on their signaling and communication systems. And this community, as you can see, is quite diverse. It's also acoustically diverse. That's an understory cricket. That's a high-frequency understory katydid. That's a mycopoda who's on the ground, very noisy. That's a canopy false leaf katydid, star of today's talk. And even our own veta, the krak is the veta. They share this, they share this forest with a community of 20 species of bats. And we figured out that the main cricket eater among these is this bat, Megaderma spasma, rejoices in the name of the lesser false vampire bat. It's not a vampire. It's a small insectivorous bat. And if you walk into a roost or under a roost, what you will see are lots of insect remains. Very usefully for us, these bats will bite off all those terrible indigestible wings, legs, ovipositors of the insects before they eat them. So if you follow roosts over time, as we did, so these are 5 roosts of spasma that we followed over a year, just collecting, remains every 10 days or so from here, and just looking at what orders of insects figure in these remains. Just to show you, these are the green katydid wings. These are ovipositors. What you can see from here is anywhere between 80% to 40%, depending on the roost that you look at, of the remains that we find are actually orthopteran, that is, of crickets. And even among them, 98% of them are katydid remains. So these guys eat a lot of katydids. But the real sort of stunner, for me at least, came with this. So again, very usefully, in these animals, and I forgot to tell you this earlier, all those calls that you heard are adult males that are calling out for females. And each species has its own particular signal. Again, you heard those different species calls. Females are silent, and they use these species-specific signals to actually find males. Because they produce these by structures on the forewings, which are very helpfully discarded by the bats for us, it's actually possible to tell male remains from female remains because females don't have these structures on their wings. So you can look at all these discarded remains and get a feel for how many males, the proportion of males and females that are being eaten. And here came the first shocker, which is that we found 1.8 times or 1.85 times as many female katydid remains as we found males. And why was this a shocker? This goes against everything that the textbooks say, which is males are producing all these loud sounds and making themselves so conspicuous. It's males that are being eaten, yeah? They'll find it in all the textbooks. They take all these risks. The females are silent, and they just approach the males. So females shouldn't be getting eaten. So this was such a strange observation that we decided to look at this closer. It kept us busy for 9 years. I'm going to take you through this as quickly as possible. So to look at it more directly, we tried these enclosure experiments wherein we had these large outdoor enclosures with a predator, a spasma, that was caught and put in there, enclosures built in the field, and we had speakers from which we played back the calls of these different katydids. There's a silent control. And we also induced flight in tethered katydid. So the idea is that males are producing calls, but females must be picked up when they're moving, when they're flying. So we also tried tethered flight. I'm going to show you a video. Which am I supposed to press again? Yeah. You'll hear the call come on. Yeah. So the call's coming on from here. This is filmed with infrared. There's a bat somewhere out there in the large enclosure. You'll have to wait a few seconds. That's the call of this canopy. There comes the bat, yeah? So that's the kind of experiment we do, and you do this again and again. And what you see is here are 3 different katydid species calls. One is at very low frequency, 3.2. One is at a higher, 11 kilohertz. And then there's Mycopoda, which is very broadband. But no matter which call you're playing out, the bats approach 30 to 40% of the time. On the other hand, if you induce tethered flight, they snap it up like in 3 seconds or 5 seconds, yeah? So basically what this is saying is that if there's a bat in your near vicinity, flying is actually way more dangerous. And it's females that fly, yeah? So the flying female katydids are probably 2 to 3 times more likely to be approached by bats in the vicinity than calling males. So then if flying is so risky, then what do females do? So to ask this, what we did was to collect females of this canopy katydid, bring them into the lab, and played back male calls to see what they would do. And that's the experiment. Very simple setup. It's a T of 2 tree branches. There's a speaker here, and you play the call. And the female is sitting here. What you expect when the call plays is that she will walk up this, or she should fly, yeah? Watch this female carefully. Can you see her shaking the leaf every time there's a chirp? So this was another big surprise. She didn't walk, she didn't fly, she's vibrating this. So we took a laser vibrometer and we measured the signal. And sure enough, after every chirp, there's a vibrational signal that's going out through the trunk. And there's a very, very tight timing relationship between every chirp and the vibratory signal for every female that we tested. So we ended up actually serendipitously discovering the first instance of a multimodal duet, an acoustic vibratory duet, with a very tight timing relationship. And we were able to show that males actually use these signals, again, with the kind of experiments where we now have a male at this end. We have an electromagnetic actuator that mimics the female's vibrational signal, and what we ask is, when a male makes a choice, is he more likely to take the arm with the vibration? And the answer is yes. So males tend to take the arm from which the vibratory signal is coming. These are a bunch of controls. So we were able to show that it's actually a signal. So we had this neat story, and we said, yes, so we've got males calling, and we have bats that eat both males and females, but because females are being preyed upon more, so maybe now they're resorting to this form of communication. They tremulate and now get males to come and find them, so they're passing that risk on to the males, maybe. Yeah. And so very neat story, but yes, we have to test it. So that's our next step. So the next question we asked is, does tremulation actually decrease female predation risk? Because that's exactly what you would predict. And my student Kasturi carried out these experiments with wonderful live predator, live prey experiments. So you've got male call, you've got the female tremulating over there. There's a bat in the cage. These are not easy experiments, but she made them work. And when you do these, what you find, she was able to induce tremulation. She was able to induce females to walk because, after 3 minutes, if nothing happens, they will walk. And this is what we found, that yes, as expected, bats never approached tremulating females, but interestingly, they didn't approach walking females either. And of course, if they fly, then they're in trouble. What this means is that bat predation selects against flight, but interestingly, actually does not explain the evolution of tremulation, because walking is actually equally safe, it's not risky, and it's energetically far less expensive, so why tremulate, okay? We don't know. We believe that the tremulation is probably more to do with the fact that these animals may find it quite hard to localize these low-frequency sounds in the trees. We've done other experiments to show that they're pretty poor at localizing these sounds, and maybe that's why they actually tremulate. What about the males? Does this acoustic vibratory duetting reduce predation risk for males? Obviously, one would imagine yes. So let me show you this one. Here we have a male who's actually calling under a leaf over here, and here's the bat. And male is calling, bat is looking around, and now comes for the male. But as I said, if you do this again and again, what you will find is, oh, sorry, I should go back. Yeah, is that both calling and flying are risky, but walking for males is also totally non-risky. So remember, if the male calls and the female responds with this vibrational signal, he stops calling and starts walking towards her. So he's actually reducing his risk as well, because walking is completely non-risky. But we end up not having explained our initial observation, which is that when we look at the cull remains, particularly for this species, these pink bars are all female. It's heavily female bars, so when are these females getting eaten, right? So we went back to flight, and we asked whether flying is riskier for females than for males. In a series of experiments where Kasturi, my student, induced flight in males and females. So here's one where the bat didn't approach. Here's a trial where the bat approaches, but the insect escapes. Here's one where the bat actually will capture the female. There. Okay. So again, if you do this again and again, yes, this was very frustrating. We found that bats approached females in flight as often as males in flight, and their capture success was also similar. So again, we had no answers. So the final hypothesis we had was that maybe, females are actually flying around much more than males. Remember that there are different trees, and not every tree has a calling male. So females may have to fly across the landscape. I'm done. And we tested this using something I dreamed of doing for 20 years. We actually managed to put radio tags onto these females and males, and we managed to follow individuals across the landscape to test whether females fly across trees more often than males, and whether the individual flights are longer. And what these graphs are telling you is, yes, the mean number of movements that females make is about 1.6 times or 1.5 times more likely to fly, and females travel 1.8 times further on flights than males. Possibly, this is what is increasing their risk of predation. At least there's a correlative evidence over here. So I'm going to end here to acknowledge all the fantastic students, postdocs, field assistants who have worked on these projects over the years, and to these wonderful animals who've been so cooperative. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. I want another 15 minutes to hear about those radio tags. That you ended on a high.
Sorry?
The radio tags, I want to hear more about those. Any questions? Well, we've got a few minutes. Do you have any questions on Hoover? Yeah? Anna?
Just a very short question. It's really interesting. So I know that bat species is a gleaner, right? So they are usually said to be specialists in picking up prey that's not specifically flying but making rustling sounds. So does that mean that those katydids don't really produce a lot of rustling sounds when they are walking because they were not detected by the bats?
I have no clue why the bats don't pick up the walking katydids, but we've done so many experiments and they never come to walking katydids. But it's not true that these are gleaners. I think, we like to box animals into categories,
Right.
but when you start looking
Exactly.
closer, we know very well that they're very opportunistic. They catch things in flight, they catch things on the ground, they
Yeah.
catch things any which way. Yeah.
Absolutely. So thank you for opening that up, that Megaderma is not only a gleaning
It's
bat
not.
and a
In fact,
specialist.
we've
So,
just,
yeah.
in the past few years, also put tags on the bats, and we're now trying to use accelerometer data with bat-borne tags to figure out when they're gleaning. In fact, that's exactly what my PhD student is working on right now.
Perfect. I'm looking forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Over
In the
here.
context of time, very quickly, Lisa.
A very quick one.
Very quick one.
Yeah.
I'm interested in why the females are taking this big risk in moving long distances. If there's,
I'm sorry, I didn't get the question.
can you hear me now?
Yeah?
Why are females taking this big risk to move long distances much further than the males if there's such strong selection pressure from the bat predation to
We don't know.
something,
Yeah,
something in the breeding biology? I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. Yes.
Thank you.